If there is anything that has so far defined this channel in the last few weeks, it has been an ongoing criticism of the President of the United States. As someone who, at one point, was open to accepting Donald Trump as a man worthy of the presidency, I feel a sense of responsibility to illuminate to others why I have since abandoned that mentality and taken an active role in standing against his presidency. I have spent the better part of the last year changing my viewpoint and opening myself up to new perspectives. A story I could most definitely tell, but at another time. Suffice it to say, that period of my life has led me to where my political views are to this day. I'm not simply anti-Trump, I'm someone who once willingly defended actions he committed, at times when I should not have. In that regard, changing one's own mind is a sobering experience, and it does not happen overnight. It leads to many somber nights where one sits alone with their own thoughts and wonders what ideas and beliefs most accurately align with the person they are becoming. I had many nights like that over the course of the last year, and one of the many factors that led to my changing viewpoint was the people around me. Close friends and family who offered me a new perspective and challenged my own preconceptions about different topics. That is inherently the root cause for me creating this channel. It serves as an opening for people to change their minds. It is one of the central reasons for my refusing to ever blindly label Trump supporters as bad people in general, because to a certain extent, I myself was one in a way. And it was only through people not judging me for that, and just talking with me, that I was able to allow my opinions to evolve. So to anyone who watches these videos, I ask you to keep an open mind, and always be willing to change your views when presented with a good reason to do so. And on that note, I would like to welcome you to the next episode of News Night.
No hesitation. Nah, no surrender. No hesitation. No surrender. No surrender. No surrender. No surrender. Oh, shit.
Good evening, this is News Night for July 2020. In news related to the COVID-19 virus, the United States has taken a turn for the worst in the last few weeks, with the death toll as of the making of this video reaching over 170,000 and the total number of cases at over 5.5 million. Despite the various warnings from doctors, scientists, and the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, many states across the country have been somewhat lax in their attempts to contain the virus. Even some states trying to reopen. The worst incident was in Florida, where in one single day, over 15,000 cases appeared.
That's a lot of
coronavirus. This lack of attention to the seriousness of the virus has been ongoing and has only gotten worse as the response of many public officials has been to tackle everything but the pandemic itself. This is represented in some of the following instances. Firstly, since this pandemic began to spread across America, Dr. Fauci has been one of the leading experts advising and informing both the Trump administration and the American people at large. Dr. Fauci, while obviously not perfect like any other human being, is a man with over 40 years of experience in medicine, and he has overseen a variety of epidemics and infections across the US, from the AIDS epidemic to the small outbreak of Ebola under Obama. Dr. Fauci has seen it all. Keeping this in mind, it should be without any doubt that he is a man worth trusting in these uncertain times. Despite this obvious fact, staff members of the Trump administration have been attacking the credibility of Dr. Fauci, attacking his belief that the country should remain shut down, despite the fact that many states that have opened up have seen a spike in cases. The fact of the matter is that Dr. Fauci is arguably the most qualified man to tackle this issue, and the president's administration is both ignoring the science and the experts. And you know what that means.
We got it! We got it! We got it! I told you what, I didn't get it. Did you not get it? I thought...
A second instance in the lack of understanding where America's priorities stand. We need look no further than the governor of Georgia, who has opened up a lawsuit against the mayor of Atlanta for trying to enforce mask wearing in public and slowing down reopening measures. The fact that I had to even type out that sentence has literally resulted in a loss of brain cells. But as if this wasn't ridiculous enough, we go to Donald Trump.
They're selling beans?
Earlier this month, the CEO of the food company, Goya, said the following about the president.
Truly blessed at the same time to have a leader like President Trump, who is a builder. And that's what my grandfather did. He came to this country to build, to grow, to prosper. And so we have an incredible builder, and we pray for our leadership, our president, and we pray for our country that we will continue to prosper and to grow.
As a result, people on the left called for boycotts against the company, and in response Donald Trump did this.
You tell me how a president in the middle of a pandemic has got time for this bullshit. Are you kidding me? Hawking products at Goya, I don't care who it is. Resolute desk. This is what he's resolute about. Pandemic priorities. His daughter Ivanka, top White House advisor. Are you kidding me?
In regard to an additional story about Donald Trump, we once again briefly turn our attention to the Supreme Court. Last week the Supreme Court made two decisions regarding the president's tax returns. The first decision involved a subpoena from Congress, or more specifically the Democrats. The Supreme Court ruled that the president did not have to surrender his financial info to the Congress, as they did not have sufficient reason to request it. And frankly, I agree. Because even though I personally cannot stand this guy, he should only have to release his financial information when there is sufficient cause to do so. This brings us to the second case, which ruled that in conjunction with an ongoing trial for grand jury, the Manhattan District Attorney was allowed to subpoena the tax records of President Donald Trump, but that they could not be released to the public for the moment. My personal take on this is that I believe it is possible something concerning will show in the president's financial records, but it is entirely likely that, even if that is the case, little to no consequences will likely come from it, as many of his pundits will simply pretend it isn't a big deal. In news related to the 2020 election, many news outlets across the country are showing polling data that is putting Joe Biden in a potential lead against Donald Trump. This, however, does not serve as anything definitive. In the event that these polls are inaccurate, this year's election could prove to be a repeat of the 2016 election. An outcome that in my opinion is less than favorable. And though in a previous episode I said that Joe Biden, like any other candidate, should earn your vote, I do believe a commentary on Trump's presidency and a potential Biden presidency is necessary. And for this, we turn to our senior investigative reporter, Mr. Stewart.
And I decided to shift genres.
Good evening, my dear viewer. I see you've come here to witness the different ideas and policies between these two powerful men running for the highest office in the world. Joe Biden, a man who more often than not forgets what he is saying, goes by the name Uncle Joe. Not to be confused with this Uncle Joe. And then we have President Donald Trump, a man who, well, not only forgets what he's saying, but more often than not doesn't give a shit what he's saying. Often goes by the name Big Cheese. Now, I'm certainly sure you must be asking yourself, how in the hell, of all people in this country, did we end up with these two, shall we say, interesting characters running for president? Well, my dear viewer, I hate to disappoint, but that shall be a tale for another time. But, on a different note, I feel it's important to analyze a few of the interesting policies that these two men have advocated for. Those policies shall include criminal justice, the economy, and healthcare. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. First off, we arrive at the dough, bringing home the bacon, the almighty dollar, the U.S. economy. Under President Donald Trump, prior to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus, one could make the case that jobs were definitely on the steady rise. However, many of these jobs were low wage, one that no one could really live off of, to be honest. Additionally, the national deficit also rose by $400 billion under Donald Trump. And not only this, but the man has also single-handedly decided to take on China all on his own in terms of an economic trade war. Then, on the other hand, we have Mr. Joe Biden, who is well known for wanting to tackle China economically, but rather than doing it all alone, he wants to do it with our allies, someone who Trump has notoriously been at odds with for quite some time now. Additionally, Mr. Biden also supports a $15 minimum wage, something that would benefit many Americans, especially now in these incredibly hard times. The next issue we have is healthcare.
I'm dying. Help me.
Now, as much as I am attempting to be somewhat impartial in all of this, it's quite difficult because, frankly, Joe Biden is obviously the far better choice compared to Donald Trump, because in spite of the occasional good thing he has done, say, passing an executive order to lower drug prices just a bit during this pandemic, we already laid out in a previous video, has played part in active healthcare discrimination against LGBT people, as well as additionally immigrants and people seeking abortion healthcare. So, to be quite frank, the obvious choice here is Joe Biden. And finally, we arrive at, shall we say, the ultimate issue being discussed in the country these days. We arrive at criminal justice reform. And to be quite frank, well, neither of these candidates are extremely ideal on this issue. In the case of Donald Trump, we have a man who thinks that the best thing to do for the country is to endlessly tweet the phrase law and order, while thinking that'll make some incredible change to the criminal justice system. He's made no statements on issues such as private prisons or mass incarceration, and in regards to systemic racism within the police system, well, the man remains adamant in a constant attempt to jump around the issue like a tiny child on a trampoline. And the most action he has taken overall to address this issue is pushing for Congress to pass, at best, minimal legislation to deal with the constant issue of police brutality across the country, and a single executive order based on banning chokeholds, a measure that was already being taken across multiple different states. And then finally, where does Joe Biden stand on all of this? Well, if you're going by this single clip,
instead of standing there and teaching a cop who's an unarmed person coming at him with a knife or something to shoot him in the leg instead of in the heart.
not ideal. But considering that Joe Biden is a Democrat, a political side that is more notorious for addressing the issue of private prisons and systemic racism as issues as a whole, it's entirely likely that the influence of being on that side of the particular aisle will definitely hold a better influence over Mr. Biden. And ideally, that would probably mean that he's the best option for dealing with these current issues that plague the nation. And as one final point of contention between these two individuals, in terms of which is probably the best option for the country. Perhaps the largest issue of all currently plaguing not just this nation, but the entire world, has been the COVID-19 virus. And if there is anything that the last 10 or so minutes of my video have shown, it's a constant series of misplaced priorities amongst the president and his entire administration in how to combat this virus. Whereas, on the other hand, Joe Biden, all around not being incredibly controversial at the moment, has at least acknowledged the science, and has acknowledged the fact that this virus is a serious issue that needs to be dealt with. Whereas the president and his administration, rather than accepting the science, have done everything they can to undermine, insult, berate, and all around make a joke out of the actual science, and perhaps the most qualified expert in the entire country at the moment, Dr. Anthony Fauci. it's obvious that Joe Biden would at least be willing to accept Dr. Fauci's intellect and recognize its incredible value. So, on that note, my dear viewer, I would like to thank you for listening to this segment of Newsnight, as you have listened to many other, I hope. I hope you wisely take the information that has not only been linked down below, but has also been given by this video. I hope you take the time to look over it and come to your own conclusions. So on that note, I would like to thank you one more time for watching, and good night.